And China's senior diplomat Yang Jiechi and State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi will meet with top U.S. diplomats in the U.S. state of Alaska on Thursday and Friday. And for more, let's go live to our correspondent Nathan King in Anchorage, Alaska. Nathan, morning from Beijing. First of all, what can we expect from this high-level dialogue?
Well, good afternoon here from Anchorage, Alaska, where you can see it's a beautiful afternoon, a little cold, and this mountain behind me is a good metaphor, if you like, because there is a mountain to climb when it comes to restoring and thawing U.S.-China relations. And ahead of that, the White House has sort of been saying what they expect from the talks. We were on a background briefing earlier, and essentially what they're stressing is they don't see a big follow-up quickly with this meeting. They're calling it a one-off. They stressed that they wanted it on American soil here in Anchorage, Alaska, and also essentially saying that they wanted to meet allies in the region, obviously Japan and the Republic of Korea, but also hear from other allies in Europe, they stressed, before meeting with China. Now, while the rhetoric of the Trump administration has been turned down, I can tell you that the background briefing essentially follows a lot of the policies. There are no hints, for example, about trade tariffs being eased at any time soon. In fact, they came up with something which is scratching a few people's heads about focusing on what they called economic coercion against an ally, that's Australia, and the trade difficulties between Beijing and Canberra, and essentially suggesting that those have to be solved before there's any movement on other issues. Is this Australia first, not America first? That's a big question as well. And essentially the White House saying that they're going to come here, present their ideas, their priorities, and also listen to China's priorities as well. They stress they want to talk about human rights in areas that China considers sovereign, including Xinjiang and Hong Kong. They mentioned Taipei, obviously, but also they want to talk about cybersecurity issues as well. And the language used by White House officials, while slightly more diplomatic, it just has the same sort of cutting edge as the Trump administration as well. So don't see things changing quite soon. Now, obviously, China will come with its own list of issues and has said that they don't like the fact that the US is inventing these ad hoc institutions like the Quad to go around multilateral institutions that have served Asia and the world well, like ASEAN and the United Nations, etc.
Right, a lot of head-scratching questions problems indeed between the two countries. Starting with some easier ones might be a good idea. And that's what you said, and as we can see right now, that Alaska is apparently colder than Beijing. Why are they meeting there?
Well, I mean, logistically it works, doesn't it, in terms of the fact that the Americans are coming back from their first trip to East Asia. Also, it works because it's halfway in between Beijing and Washington. But I think you're absolutely right to suggest the mountain behind me, because, as you know, Alaska is on the front line of climate change. And also that's one area of cooperation that we've seen in the past and may do in the future. And, you know, this why Anchorage question is very interesting. So I thought it'd be good to talk to someone who knows Anchorage and Alaska very well. That's the former governor, Bill Walker. Let's take a listen.
Like many others here this week, the governor wants to see a thaw in US-China relations after the deep freeze of the last few years.
I'm hopeful from the standpoint, I think that there are some issues that they need to resolve that are well outside the area of trade. And I think they're going to start with that.
The planned meetings here, led by US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and China's most senior diplomat and Politburo member Yang Jiechi, are being called a one-off by the White House. Joined by new US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi, this high-level meeting will occur here in Anchorage, roughly halfway between Washington and Beijing. It's a sub-zero scene reflecting where the relationship has been, but Alaska is also an epicenter for issues the two powers need to work on, like climate change and commerce.
China is our largest trade partner. They have been for 13 years, and largely with seafood, oil. The amount of oil that's shipped from Alaska to China has doubled from 2019 to 2020. So we have a lot of Asia is our market.
This meeting on the ice will happen after US officials have met with Asian allies Japan and the Republic of Korea. Bill Walker was governor the last time leading Chinese officials visited the Arctic state. He hosted Xi Jinping and his delegation after they'd just held their first summit with then President Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Since then, the US-China relationship has chilled, and while the US criticises China on human rights from Hong Kong to Xinjiang, US political divisions and violence have tarnished Washington's image abroad. This independent-minded former governor is pushing to change that.
It does have a negative impact, and I'm all about jobs, I'm all about creating infrastructure and developing our resources responsibly. And it's hard to do that if there's too much partisanship associated. You know, the economy should not be a partisan issue. You know, healthcare, I've always said, should not be a partisan issue. So there are certain things that just should be, you search for the right answer.
Yeah, Bill Walker there with some wise words. I mean, obviously he was talking about the divisions in America's domestic politics here, but we've seen a lot of divisions, haven't we, between the two biggest economies. And even though the rhetoric going in is a little sharp from Washington, at least the fact that they're in the room in the first 100 days of a Biden presidency is going to be good. And there's nothing better than talking to see if we can chart a way forward with this new US administration. And we'll be covering it here all week in the frozen north in Alaska. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Nathan, who is going to witness the whole process, the first high-level talks between China and the US after Biden took office. Now, the top diplomats and defense chiefs of Japan and the United States have held talks in Tokyo. Xin Ruinan has more details.
Meeting close partners in Asia and reaffirming commitment to traditional allies.
We will continue to work together on core security issues like the denuclearization of North Korea and maritime security, and we'll stand up for our shared democratic values because we know that democracy and human rights are core elements of any stable and secure region.
The alliance is seen by some in Asia as a potential counterweight to a growing Chinese influence and alleged aggression in Asia-Pacific.
The security environment is becoming increasingly severe, so it is necessary for us to make the Japan-US alliance even stronger.
China says cooperation between Japan and the US should benefit the entire region.
We believe that exchanges and cooperation between the United States and Japan should help enhance mutual understanding and trust, as well as unity and cooperation among countries in the region. It should contribute to the peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region, instead of targeting and damaging the interests of a third party.
Last week, China once again rejected allegations that it follows expansionist policies in the region and called for dialogue with Japan over maritime disputes.
We hope that Japan will honor the spirit of its four-point principled agreement with China, work together with China, and stop words and deeds that may lead to a more complicated situation.
On Thursday, the U.S. delegation will meet with senior Chinese officials Yang Jiechi, director of the Office of the Central Commission for Foreign Affairs, and Wang Yi, the foreign minister and state councilor. They're expected to discuss a range of issues, including trade and other issues of disagreement. Xin Ruinan, CGTN.